Hello, welcome back to Mancinima. I hope you've all had a lovely weekend, and lovely Easter weekend that should be. Right, so we have a movie for you today, but before we get into that, you know the usual routine. Please like this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, please do not subscribe to the channel because it will unsubscribe you. It's the way it works. And please hit the notification bell and you'll be notified about all the upcoming videos that I've got to come. So without further ado, let's take a look at today's video. And today's video is a review of the movie Renfield, which opened in cinemas this past Friday. It's directed by the director Chris McKay, who also did the Lego Batman movie. And it stars Nicholas Hoult as the titular character Renfield. After centuries of loyal servitude, finding victims for his abusive, narcissistic boss Dracula, here played by Nicolas Cage, our man Robert Montague Renfield is looking for his own path, a path out of his master's shadow. While on a temporary stay in New Orleans, he finds a new lease of life. He falls in love with Awkwafina's traffic cop, Rebecca Quincy, and maybe finds a way forward. He goes to therapy, tries to find a new way to get rid of his master's codependency, if you like. However, he does keep finding himself drawn back to his master, and he needs to make that break away from Dracula in order to make this path forward for himself. And that is the plot of this movie. From what I'd read in the press and what I'd seen in the trailers, Renfield should have been the perfect movie for me. I love the old Universal Monsters movies. I was raised on Dracula and Frankenstein from when they used to show them on television here in the UK back in the kind of the late 70s, early 80s. So I'd grown up with these monsters. I'd grown up with that classic black and white gothic kind of look. And especially hearing that Nicolas Cage was in this film. Nicolas Cage is watchable in just about anything that he does. So this should have been actually the perfect combination for me. Which is why I was really bitterly disappointed when I saw the final film on Friday. This is supposed to be a direct sequel to the 1931 Dracula, and it does do a lovely homage at the beginning. There's this lovely opening where they kind of, I don't know if they superimpose or whether they CGI the characters in, but you've got Nicolas Cage playing the Bela Lugosi Dracula, delivering the lines that he did on the stairwell as he welcomes Renfield into the castle. And Nicholas Hoult is superimposed over Renfield as well, so they're kind of leading you in to believe this is a direct sequel to that 1931 classic. So from the very beginning I thought, oh great, this is going to start off great, this is the path we're going down, I'm in. Even if Nicolas Cage does kind of resemble Christopher Lee's Dracula much more than Bela Lugosi's. However, the film kind of disappointed from the moment it moves into the modern era, once it moves on to New Orleans. Nicolas Cage is actually superb as Dracula. He's a very fine Dracula. Sometimes a little bit scenery chewing, sure, but that's what Nicolas Cage does. And, you know, I would love to have seen more of him in this movie. However, he's kind of sidelined. He's kind of sidelined in favour of the Nicholas Hoult character. I mean, the movie is called Renfield after all, so it should be about Renfield. That's fine. However, Dracula was a huge part of Renfield's story, so to have him sidelined so much is, like I say, a bit of a disappointment, really. It tends to focus on Nicholas Hoult's character's feelings, and he goes to this therapy session at the beginning, and he feels that he's got this codependency with Dracula, and he tries to break away from him. He wants to be his own person. And that's very heavy within the context of this film. It's very heavily laid down of this codependency on abusive relationships, and that's the message that's being delivered all the way through this movie is, you know, break away from abusive relationships, which is a great message, but when you're delivering it within a movie that's supposed to be a little bit comedy, a little bit action, a little bit horror, and doesn't really deliver strongly across all those fronts, it gets a little bit lost and it becomes a little bit tedious, you know? In the press releases that I've read, Renfield is billed as a comedy. Now, for my money, it doesn't lean far enough into that. I really wish it had pushed further into the comedy aspect, but as it is, it's a bit of an odd mishmash between comedy, action, and horror, of course, and it doesn't really deliver strongly on any of those fronts. It sort of really decided what kind of a film it wanted to be from the outset and leaned further into that kind of film. Instead it wants to be all of these films and doesn't really deliver strongly on either one of them, really. The film breaks into these fight action sequences, and they're very cartoonish. They look like it was stolen from a superhero movie. Especially movies like Man of Steel. Have you seen the end of Man of Steel where he's fighting Zod and they're smashing into buildings and then getting back up, and one smashes the other one and then he gets back up again? There's moments in this film like this. A character will get punched, they'll fly across the room, hit a wall, be stunned for a moment, get up, they'll fly back across the room, hit the person, they'll fly into a wall, they'll get up, and it's that kind of thing, and it goes on and on. It's not as if it happens just once within the film, it happens quite frequently. And I mean, for my money, it's quite tedious just to see that. It's kind of, oh, come on, get on with the plot, we don't need to see all this. It's almost doing action scenes for action scenes' sake. The other thing I did like about it is that it kind of also reminded me of a Mortal Kombat movie. If you've ever played Mortal Kombat the game, when they hit somebody and they got that big spray of cartoon blood comes out, and then the next character gets hit and another spray of cartoon blood, that is exactly what you get in Renfield. When someone's getting hit or someone's getting bitten, there's a spray of blood that goes up, and it doesn't look realistic. It looks CGI, well it is CGI, it's a CGI horrible blood mess. And you can tell that it's CGI because none of the blood lands on the people and stays on them. So they just get hit, spray of blood, and before you know it, they're either dead or they're getting up and fighting again. So yeah, some of the effects in this film, some of the action sequences in this film, they get a little bit tedious because they're repetitive and they don't look good. I felt the movie should have focused more on the relationship between Renfield and Dracula, because, you know, basically that's the whole plot of the movie, is that they're trying to deal with this abusive relationship and Renfield wants to make the break away from it. However, a side plot is introduced. You've got Rebecca's drug-dealing nemesis, Teddy and Bella, and that kind of drags the film off in another direction as well, and all the while they're kind of on the screen, you feel like you're not getting on with the main story, and it drags it away. So I felt that was a little bit of a misstep as well. Probably could have chucked that whole plot out the window and found another way just to develop the relationship between Renfield and Rebecca, and also Renfield and Dracula. That would have been a much more interesting dynamic for the film. By adding these other characters in the film, it drags it off in another direction, and you just think, oh, come on, let's get back to the main plot, or what the hell is this all about? So yeah, it makes it a little bit tedious, and also the more characters that you introduce that aren't in the main plot is pushing Nicolas Cage's Dracula further out of the picture, so he really isn't seen as much as he needs to be in this movie, and that's a great shame. I think overall, I think this movie could have been given a further few drafts before it was submitted to being filmed. Or maybe a further few edits once the film had been made. So maybe you could look at that first cut and said, you know what, this plot with the drug dealers and all that business isn't really working, let's take that out, let's boost up the relationship between Rebecca and Renfield and Dracula and see where we go from there. So yeah, it kind of feels a little bit rushed out. The film itself doesn't really know what it wants to be. It doesn't really lean heavily enough for my money into the comedy. It doesn't lean heavily enough into the horror either. It does have action sequences which I think were unnecessary, and it's, you know, we don't really want to see Renfield as an action film anyway. We do want to see the horror or maybe the comedy aspect of the movie. So yeah, for my money that was a bit of a disappointment. So would I say you should go and see Renfield at the cinema? Only if you really want to, only if there's nothing else on, you know, that week. Maybe go and give Renfield a look. I was disappointed. Maybe it's a film that you'll enjoy, but this is just for me as a horror fan, as a horror comedy fan as well. I was just personally disappointed in it, so it wasn't my cup of tea, but maybe it's your cup of tea. If I was to give the movie a rating out of 10, I would probably go either 6 out of 10 or maybe 7 out of 10. Just above average, really. Nothing really to get excited about, and I would possibly say just sit and wait for it to turn up on Sky. So that's my review of Renfield, and I hope you've enjoyed the review, even if I didn't enjoy the movie. Anyway, a better movie is coming out towards the end of this week, and that will be Evil Dead Rise, so hopefully I'll be able to get out to the cinema and see that for you, and I'll review that for you next week. Also next week, showing at limited places around, and you'll have to go and search your local cinemas for this because it really is spread right out, is the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So yeah, 40 years since Return of the Jedi was at the cinema. I remember seeing that when I was a kid. Makes me old, doesn't it? So yeah, find your local cinemas, go and see Return of the Jedi, and in some places it's shown for the first time ever in 3D, so that'll be, you know, unique. So hopefully I'll get to review that as well, but we'll never know. Maybe I can find a cinema to see it in. For the moment, we have some new videos coming up today. There's another episode of Star Wars Celebration. So the first episode was out last week, my first day, if you like, at the Star Wars Celebration event. Please go and give that video a watch, please give it a like, and hopefully tune in for parts 2 and 3. Part 3 will be going out next Monday, I believe, because we've got part 2 going out today, so maybe part 3 is out Friday. I don't know. It'll be on the schedule anyway. So yes, please go and give those a watch. Celebration parts 1, 2 and 3, shot while I was at the event, so hopefully you'll get an idea of what the event was like, and maybe I'll do a review video at the end telling you what I thought about that overall. But in the meantime, you know the routine. Please like this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out a great deal. please hit the notification bell, and please come and have a chat with me down in the comments. I'd like to know what you thought about Renfield, or whether you like old horror movies, whether you're a fan of the classic horror movies like the Universal Monsters like I am, or whether you prefer perhaps the Hammer horror movies with with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and all those kind. Anyway, come and have a chat with me down in the comments. Thank you very much for watching this one. We'll be back soon, and I will see you real soon.